A lot of people on Reddit have been asking lately what Cube is. Well, I'm Beard MTG, and I'm going to tell you what Cube is, and then I'm going to talk to you about my Cube. So, what a Cube is essentially a DIY draft set. It's um, it's enough cards to do a draft that you create yourself. You create a number of boosters out of cards that you own, and then you basically get together with your buddies and you draft it. Um, so how you go about doing that is you first and foremost you determine how many people you want to support. Most people choose to support a standard 8-man cube. An 8-man draft, which equates to an 8-man cube. um, It usually contains 360 cards. Now, there are card cubes that contain 540, 720, and I even think that there's a 900, but those are pretty big. The purpose of those beyond the 360 is a number of individuals. So, a 720 draft, for example, is a 16-man draft out of the cube, and that's huge. If you can get if you can get 16 people together to do a draft, that's truly awesome. Um, but normally with a regular cube, you have 8 people. You need to create 24 booster packs so that each of those 8 players can get 3 booster packs, like a normal draft. And then in each of those booster packs, there's 15 cards. So that's where the number 360 comes from. 8 people times 3 booster packs times 15 cards per pack is 360. And so that's where those numbers come from. The cube itself is a singleton format for the most part. There are some cubes that contain multiples of certain cards, and to allow certain dynamics within the cube. I mean, some people I've seen have multiple fetch lands. Um, Sometimes they'll have multiple of a particular rare or common, just depending on what the cube designer is going for when they create the cube. But my cube is a standard cube. By no means is it super powered or anything like that. I'll explain what that means in a minute. But I mean, my cube is mostly rares, commons, uncommons, stuff that I had. And I basically started by looking on CubeTutor.com and looking at your average cubes and looking what other people did and trying to formulate my own based on what was available to me. So I started by breaking my cube down by color. So within my cube right now, there are 50 of each of the 5 colors of magic for 250 cards. And then I've got 90 other cards, and the others are, I believe, there's around 50 multicolored, 5 for each of the 10 guilds, and then land and artifacts as well. Sorry for the shoddy camera work. I don't have a tripod, but I plan on getting one soon. So that's pretty much how the colors of the cube are broken down. You try to keep it equal. But I mean, it is possible that you aren't able to balance the colors out, or maybe you don't want to. Maybe there's a reason. A friend of mine, for example, has an all black cube. Every card in the cube is black, and that's how they like to play it, and it works out quite well from what I'm told. But my cube is a 5-color cube. It's unpowered, and what unpowered means, you'll hear people talking about different types of cubes. There's power cubes, legacy cubes. Sometimes there are even block cubes, which are specific to a given block. But what they mean by powered versus unpowered is whether or not they have the power 9. So the Moxes, the Black Lotuses, the Time Walks, those types of things. Those cards for me are just too expensive. And I feel that they are Not that they wouldn't be good in the cube, but in order to have them in a cube, I feel that you need to have everything else at such a high level, um, in order to pay the A, to pay those cards respect, and B, to give it a balance. I mean, if I were to get one of the Moxen and put it in here, I mean, it would break that one color. I would really need to get all of them, um, the other four, just to balance it out. And that's another thing about Cube. When you do build it, you really need to keep balance in mind. You can't just take, if you historically have played white, say you play white in standard or white blue or whatever, whatever you may do, um, you can't just take all of your white blue cards that you've been building, your best white blues, put them together, and then get a bunch of junk from the other colors and expect it to work. It won't. You'll find that it just doesn't work. The person who drafts that one particular deck will draft it, and they'll probably win. So that's why you have to be very cognizant of balance in your cube. I think I covered everything. Without further ado, I'll get into my cube. So what I'm doing in this video, now that I've explained what cube is I'm going to show you the white cards from my cube and go through each of the cards, explaining why they're there, and I'm going to try to do my best not to just say, this is a good card because it is. That's really doesn't really justify anything, and it doesn't really help you guys understand why they're there or what to do if you wanted to build your own cube. So here we go. So the first card I have here is Dragon Hunter. This is a 1 mana 2/1. A lot of cards in the one slot. These are actually broken down by creatures, planeswalkers, instants, sorceries, enchantments, whatever. So the first 30 or so are going to be creatures. But the first one being Dragon Hunter. He's a 1 mana for 2/1 with protection from dragons, and he can block dragons as though he had reach. Now, in my cube, that last bit is not going to be as actually the protection from dragons and can block dragons as though he had reach. Not that big of a deal. Right now, there are a few dragons in the cube, but they might come out. I don't know. But either way, this guy is a 1 mana 2/1. That's pretty cool. So Loam Lion, 1 mana for a 1/1. He gets +1/+2 as long as you control a forest. That's really good for the white-green or Celestia combo or strategy. I played it last weekend when I drafted the cube, and I found that he was pretty good. I mean, on turn 2, I was able to make him a 2/3, and I mean, once you go with that, that's kind of hard to react to pretty quickly. Most of the 1-drops in the cube, and most of 1-drops in general, are either 1/1s, or you might get like just like this guy here, your 2/1. If they're trading off on turn 2, you're better off, right? You're going to win that combat. Next, we have Mother of Runes. I think that's, if you've never played with her before, you really should try her out, because the ability to just tap her and give something you control protection, that's pretty good. She can be very. She's a utility card, in the right place, right time. Savannah Lions. Sorry, reposition here. Savannah Lions. 1 mana 2/1. Enough said. Another one is a 1 mana 2/1 Soldier of the Pantheon. Protection from multicolored, and whenever you cast a multicolored spell, someone gains life. Soul's Attendant. Whenever another target creature enters the battlefield, you may gain 1 life for 1 mana 1/1. You're not going to get a lot of value out of this guy. I mean, if someone sees it, they're probably going to try to get rid of it, or unless you're doing like a token strategy, she's probably good to keep around for a turn or two. but you're going to want to get rid of her shortly thereafter. I mean, if you can keep her in for a while, gaining life, that's really cool. But other than that, it's just a 1/1. Steep links, or step links, depending on your dialect. Whenever you enters the battlefield, or whenever he enters the whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, he gets +2/+2 until it turns landfall. He's probably coming out of the cube because I don't like the fact that on your turn he's a 2/3, on your opponent's turn he's a 0/1. That's really tough because I mean, yes, it works out in an aggro strategy, but if you miss a land drop or you're not on the offensive, he's not great. And that's kind of something you need to keep in mind when you're building a cube, is that not all cards are good for all circumstances. I don't know if you guys have heard of the quadrant theory by the guys over at Limited Resources. They take the concept of card in 4 quadrants. When you're ahead, when you're behind, and I forget. Sorry, when you're ahead and you're winning, when you're behind and losing, when you're at parity, and I believe the other one is at the beginning of the game. So he's really only useful in 1 or 2 of those. So in that regard, he's probably coming out. Student of Warfare. 1 mana for a 1/1, 2 mana for a 3/3 with first strike, 8 mana for a 4/4 with double strike. I mean, if you're passing turn, land pass turn, chances are you can just, tap that land and put it into this guy, make him a little bit better, a little bit bigger. There's nothing wrong with that. If you need the mana, you use it for other things, but if you don't, pump it into this guy. Johnny's Sunstriker. 2 mana for a 2/2 lifelink. Not fantastic, but not the worst either. Maybe a candidate for coming out later. I don't know. I haven't played him myself enough to know, but maybe I'll ask my buddies and see what they have to say about him. Seeker of the Way. 2 mana for a 2/2 with prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Seeker of the Way gains lifelink until end of turn. This goes well with blue-white control strategies, or white-red burn strategies. Really, white anything where you're playing multiple spells. And even if you're not, he's still at 2 mana 2/2, so he passes the vanilla test. And then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, he gains lifelink until end of turn and gets +1/+1. Not a bad card by any means, I don't think. Soulfire Grandmaster. 2 mana for a 2/2 with lifelink, and instant and sorcery spells you have lifelink, or sorry, you control have lifelink. If you've played it in Standard, you know that it can be good, it can be bad. If you haven't played it, well then, I just told you. It can be good, it can be bad. If you're playing white-red, well then, I mean, your Lightning Bolt turns into a Lightning Helix for free. That in itself is value. But his second ability here, the ability to give his pay 4. Next time you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand this turn, put that card into your hand instead of your graveyard as it resolves. So it's essentially buyback for your spells. It can be good, especially in that scenario where you do have that Lightning Bolt and 5 mana up. I mean, if you've got 5 mana and Lightning Bolt, you're casting your Lightning Bolt, burning for 3, gaining 3, and then it comes back to your hand to do it again next turn. That's just value. Nyxfleece Ram, 2 mana for 0/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life. It's not exactly the best, but it is a bit of a pet card in my playgroup. One particular guy loves this card, and so I kind of put it in there for him. That's another thing you keep in mind when you're building your cube. If you know the group of individuals that you're playing with, you can cater to them. If and when I get to the red video, you'll see that I have a number of cards in there that probably shouldn't be in there, but I've got one guy who plays in my playgroup who regularly drafts mono red. He just loves mono red, and he wants it to be as janky and as foolish as he can possibly be. So I've got a few things in there for him, and I'll explain that when I do the red video. Next up, we have Brimaz, King of Oreskos, 3 mana for a 3/4 with Vigilance. Whenever he attacks, put a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token in with Vigilance on the battlefield tapped and attacking. And whenever he blocks a creature, basically do the same thing. Except in that token blocks that creature as well. If you haven't played with this guy and you see it in a cube, play him. He's great. But at the same time, if you do play him, expect him to die because people do not like him and he may blow up. Hushwing Griff is a 3 mana for a 2/1 with flash and flying. Creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. This guy is Value Town if you know what you're playing against. So, I mean, maybe you sideboard him, maybe you don't. 3 mana for a 2/1 with flying is not all that great. 3 mana for a 2/1 with flying and flash, a little bit better because, maybe you can flash him in and get that block off when you really need to. But that last part there, creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. That's a big deal because, if you got him down on turn 3 and your opponent is ready to go into a Grave Titan on his next turn, this is going to stop that dead in its tracks. So, if you can, and it works out in the way you're playing it, I would definitely play that card. Mirran Crusader. 2 white and 1 colorless for a 2/2 with double strike protection from black and green. That's just Value Town. I don't know what more I can say about that. Silverblade Paladin. 3 mana for a 2/2 Soulbound. As long as Silverblade Paladin is paired with another creature, both of those creatures have double strike. A little conditional, but he's still good. If you can soulbind him, if you're playing white-black, and you get him in there with the Grave Titan, that's great. If you get him in with something other, big baddie, double strike is always a good ability to have. Porcelain Legionnaire. 3 mana for a 3/1 with first strike. That first strike is his saving grace, so he's going to die to a lightning bolt, he's going to die to a shock, he's going to die to a lot of things that have, tap, just deal 1 damage to something. But in combat, that first strike is definitely helpful. Hero of Bladehold. Just like Brimaz, if you've never played with this card, do it, play with it, and you'll know what I mean. Archangel of Thune. She's in here for some life gain and some +1/+1 counters. For 5 mana, 3/4 flying, I know it's not that great. 5 mana, 3/4 flying lifelink is a little bit better, but to add in that whenever you hit somebody with her and you gain life, you put a counter on each creature you control. That is fantastic. Here's another one. Baneslayer. If you get the 2 of those guys out, there's another life gain trigger, and you get more +1/+1 counters. She's a 5/5 for 5 with flying first strike vanilla test. She passes the vanilla test. Flying first strike lifelink protection from demons and dragons. This card is great. Again, like I said, she passes the vanilla test at 5 mana for 5/5. Then having flying first strike lifelink is just great. The protection from demons and dragons isn't always relevant, but when it is relevant, you get very happy. Because most big black things are going to be demons or dragons or something along those lines. And having protection from them usually means that you can go swing, and get in a win. Wingmate Rock. 3/4 for 5. Whenever it attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature. It also has a raid trigger. When it enters the battlefield, if you attack with a creature this turn, put a 3/4 white bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So you play this guy in your second main phase. Always. Okay, it's the Lunarch. This guy works quite well with Archangel of Thune, so if you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on him, you can tap him, and then add that 1/1 counter to each other creature you control. So he's a bit of an engine. He's a X white for a 0/0, but he comes in with +1/+1 counters equal to X. So you pay 4 and white, so he comes in as a 4/4. You can tap him to put a +1/+1 counter on him, or you can tap him and remove a +1/+1 counter, and then put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. I think it's self-explanatory as to how good this guy can be, and that's pretty much it. Sorry guys, I'm new to this stuff. So here we've got a 6-mana 6/6 in Sun Titan. He's got Vigilance, and when he enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. He is part of the Titan cycle. I've got all 5 of them in here. 5. He's pretty good. Illuminate Primordial. 7 mana for a 4/7 with Vigilance. When he enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls, and that player gains life equal to its power. This guy can be your spot removal. He can be a waste of at 7 mana. But if you get him in the right scenario, again, there's another card that's somewhat circumstantial. I mean, if you get him out and your opponent doesn't have anything, well, I mean, you're sweeping him with a 4/7 beater with Vigilance. If you do get him out and your creature has that big scary thing on the other side of the board, I mean, chances are you don't care if they gain life equal to its power. It's kind of like Swords of Plowshares that way, in that once you get rid of that thing, you really don't care whether or not they're gaining life. Ray Dawnbringer. She costs 9, 6, and 3 colorless for a 4/6 with flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You combine her in a Reanimator type deck to keep pulling things out when you don't need, when you don't have the spells anymore. She's usually a good target for Buried Alive or Entomb if you need to go about that way. Some people could play it. I mean, you could play it in a regular deck. I mean, chances are you're not going to get the 9 mana, but it's in there. Next up, we have a Johnny Steadfast, 4 mana Planeswalker with 4 loyalty. His +1 gives target creature +1/+1 first strike, vigilance, and lifelink, which is fantastic. Unfortunately, it's only until end of turn. His -2 is a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and a loyalty counter on each other planeswalker you control. That is great. If you're playing a white weenie deck, for example, and you drop this guy down for 4, you take all the other guys you have and put +1/+1 counters on them, and then he's still around next turn. And you basically, I mean, if I were playing this in a white weenie deck, I'd tick up 2 by doing this, and then I'd come down 2 with the with the +1/+1 counters. That's just great. But I mean, if you need to, you can always try to hit the 7 and get the emblem. It says if a source would deal damage to you or a planeswalker you control, prevent all but 1 of that damage. I mean, he's not amazing, but he is pretty good. Gideon, Champion of Justice. He's I put him in here to see how he plays. I haven't played with him before. I didn't play during the I believe this is the Ravnica Gate Crash era, and I wanted to see how he plays. That's all he's there for. Elspeth Sun's Champion. She's great, and I mean really great. She has a +1 to put 3 1/1 white soldiers into play, a -3 to destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater, and a -7 that says you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have flying. She costs 6, but chances are you've got something else on the board to protect her, so you can right away drop her down, get yourself 3 soldier tokens, or destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater, which, I mean, that in itself can mean that you win the game. If you're doing it right, I mean, destroying all creatures with power 4 or greater, sometimes it will hurt you, and that really sucks, but it'll allow you to get all the big things off the board and hopefully regain some board control. Next up, we have Brave the Elements. Choose a color. Sorry, 1 mana instant. So that was the planeswalkers and creatures. Next up, we have the instants. Brave the Elements, 1 mana for an instant. Choose a color. White creatures you control gain protection from the chosen color until end of turn. This guy is great because what it does is it allows you to use it offensively to get in for those last couple points of damage if you need to, because it's all white creatures you control. So I mean, if you're playing a white weenie strategy, or if you've got some of the angels that were there, giving them protection from your opponent's spells, or providing they're playing a monocolored deck, or maybe they're playing two-color deck. Chances are, though, this is going to allow you to get in past their blockers, and or maybe reactionary, and protect your guys, letting you take the win. Erase is the next card. Probably going to be replaced with Disenchant. Now, what Erase does is it's a 1 mana. It says exile target enchantment. What Disenchant is a 2 mana sorcery that says destroy target artifact or enchantment. And the reason that I want to replace this with Disenchant is because I don't have a lot of pieces or cards in the cube that have indestructible. And because of that, I don't really care so much about the target enchantment part, but I wanted to have it be more versatile and be able to destroy enchantments as well. There's another card in here that I'll get to in a moment that may be replaced for Disenchant instead of this one, but I'll get to that in a minute. Next up, we have Path to Exile. This is removal. 1 mana, instant exile target creature. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land, put that into play, tapped, and then shuffle his or her library. So, your opponent is saying, hey man, I'm going to come beat you down with, again, I'll use my old fancy Grave Titan as the example. Say he's coming at you with that Grave Titan. Say, you know what? I don't want you to. Before you go to combat, let's get rid of him, and Merry Christmas, you can have a land. It's great. It's just funny. Swords of Plowshares, same thing. Maybe you don't care about your opponent gaining 6 life from that Grave Titan. Exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. Great card. For 1. It's a wonderful card. Also a very old card. No, not that one. That one's not, obviously, but... next up, we have Apostle's Blessing. 1 mana and a white Phyrexian mana. This guy can be played in any color deck because of that Phyrexian mana. And he says, target artifact or creature you control gains protection from artifacts or from the color of your choice until end of turn. Can do the same thing as Brave the Elements earlier. Protect your dude, so that they can't block you, and you come in for you swing for the win. Or maybe he's the counter to your opponent's Doomblade. He says Doomblade, and you say nah, pro black, and keeps your guy alive. Feat of Resistance. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. 2 mana for this, and I mean it's good because I believe that 2 mana for protection is great, and then adding a +1/+1 counter on it as well is awesome. I mean, most people would pay 2 mana for either one of those things. Maybe not 2 mana for a +1/+1 counter, but I believe that it's a good card. Whether or not it appears in many decks, it still remains to be seen. I mean, I'll definitely play it when I do get it and see if it's any good. And if it doesn't play it, well, then we remove it. Next up, we have Sundering Growth. 2 Celestia mana. It says destroy target artifact or enchantment and then populate. White, as you may have seen here, there's a little bit of a token theme to it. So, I mean, that's great. You can put a copy. Sorry. Destroy target artifact or enchantment for 2. Absolutely, it's good. That's the Disenchant syndrome, or the type deal that I was talking about earlier. And then it's got the Populate, which says put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of a creature token you control. So you've got that 1/1 soldier token. For 2 mana, we're going to blow up your opponent's artifact or enchantment and then get another soldier. This is good. Valorous Stance. 2 mana. It says exile target creature gains indestructible until end of turn, or Destroy target creature with power, toughness 4 or greater. Sorry guys, this is the second time I've had to do this video because my camera died. Sorry, I didn't die. The the memory card was full up on the first time through, so I'm a little mixed up here. This card is basically says your dude can't be blown up this turn or blow up something that you care about. Maybe you've seen people talking about this before. This is a good card for those very reasons. Take up arms, 5 mana. We'll put 3/1/1 white warrior tokens into the battlefield. My God, I'm sorry, but this camera work is terrible. I should really just stop. Ugh. This guy's good, but he's not as good as the next card. I'm not going to spend too much time on him, and here's why. This card is better. I need to get something to replace that other one, but this one is good. 3 mana for 2/1/1 white spirits with that fly, and then I can pay 1 and a black to flashback this. So if you compare the two cards, one costs 5. One costs 5 and gives you 3 1/1s. One costs 3, gives you 2 with a flashback of for a total of 5. And those dudes fly, so that's why he's better. So we're going to try to find something else similar to it. If you guys know something I can use, let me know. Remember the Fallen. Choose one or both. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and or return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. I'm a big fan of recursion. I like being able to, get that thing that I used back. Maybe I get back that big beater, or maybe I get back my mana rock or some nice equipment. Situational, but I think it's still good. Cube Classic Armageddon. This card is hilarious, but if you do play it in somebody's cube, try to be nice about it and only play it if it actually wins you the game. I play a lot of casual Commander as well, Commander EDH, and one of my biggest pet peeves is when people play this card and don't use it as a win scenario. I have a friend who plays it in an Avacyn deck, so all of his permanents are indestructible. So he plays this, and he blows up all of his opponent's lands, keeping his own. It's cheap, but it is the right thing to do because he's using it to win the game. If you're just playing this to be a shit disturber, you're a jerk. Breath of Life. Take any one summon creature card from your discard pile and put that card into play. Treat it as though you just played it from your hand. What this card says is, put target creature card from your graveyard into the battlefield. I need to look up that treat as though you just played it from your hand part, because that may actually mean that, if certain triggers that have, whenever you cast something from your hand, they may apply. So, for example, Emrakul has, when you cast him, you get an extra turn. If this particular piece goes well with that and allows it to be as if it were cast, well then, when you played the Emrakul using Breath of Life, then you'd get an extra turn. So I think I'm going to have a look on the rules of this card just to be sure. And if that is the case, maybe I put Emrakul in my cube, because that'd be really funny. Wrath of God. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. It's a board wipe for 4. This is the original board wipe. That's a good card, because sometimes you need a board wipe. Speaking of board wipes and hostilities, destroy all creatures and all permanents attached to those creatures. This gets rid of enchantments. It gets rid of equipment. It's just an overall good card. Iona's Judgment. This is the guy I was referring to earlier when I said I wanted to remove it for disenchant. Exile target creature or enchantment, as I mentioned earlier, don't really need to be worrying too much about exiling. There may be 1 or 2 cards in this cube that are indestructible, but for the most part, exiling isn't as, not that big of a deal. But this is I just realized this does target creatures as well, so perhaps disenchant isn't as good, or as disenchant as artifacts or enchantment. Maybe I can find something better. Hyena Umbra. If you played during the World Wake, the Zendikar block, the original Zendikar block, not the upcoming Battle for Zendikar block, you know that the Totem Armor mechanic is fantastic. And this card just spells, it literally has value written right across the center here. This is 1 mana for a 1/1, 1 mana that gives an enchanted creature +1/+1 and first strike, as well as Totem Armor. So if you're unfamiliar with Totem Armor, what it does is it says that if enchanted creature will be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. So for 1 mana, it gets +1/+1 and first strike. That in itself is pretty good. You'd probably play an enchantment, or you'd probably play an equipment that does that. But the benefit of this guy is that not only does he give you the +1/+1 and first strike, is that he gives you Totem Armor. And that allows it so that if it dies, it doesn't die. You just lose the +1/+1 and first strike. This is a good card, and I think there are very few scenarios where this wouldn't be helpful. Pacifism. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. Okay, this is one example where Hyena Umbra wouldn't be beneficial, but they're both white, so hopefully you don't have to stare this guy down if you're playing the other one. Suspension Field. These are white removal by the looks of it. Yeah, they're all white removal. All enchantments now, by the way. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature with power toughness 3 or greater until end of turn. Until Suspension Field leaves the battlefield. For 2 mana, remove something big until your opponent can find a way to get rid of Suspension Field. That's what this says. That's cool. Arrest. 3 mana. An enchanted creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. This guy is I mean, there are so many scenarios where your opponent, you're staring down some scary enchanted or some scary activated ability. You just say, here, this dude's under arrest, and then he's basically sitting there for the rest of the game, unless your opponent can get rid of this. Oblivion Ring. When an Oblivion Ring, it's a 3 mana enchantment. When it comes into play, remove another target non-land permanent from the game. When Oblivion Ring leaves play, return the removed card to play under its owner's control. So this, like the Suspension Field and the Arrest and Pacifism, these guys all basically just remove something until you can get rid of the Pacifism or the Suspension Field, Arrest, or Oblivion Ring. So guys, that's the white in my cube. I'm really sorry about the shoddy camera work. My camera died a few times. Hopefully these are some things that I can try to fix when I do the next color. I'm going to be following the standard Bluebird. So that's white, blue, black, red, green. And then I'll do the colorless and multicolored, then I'll do multicolored artifacts and then lands. Hopefully I haven't bored you too much. If you have any questions about what cube is, how to start your own, different types of cubes, or anything like that, send me a message, and thanks for watching.